AYO Dosunmu, you're a bad, bad man. He went crazy. AYO Dosunmu, he storms in with 43 points. Dropping 43? That's how you feeling? Okay. I understand. I understand it now. He storms by, with all the injuries, Ant and Dante DiVincenzo being out, and AYO Dosunmu brings them to the promised land. He brings the Timberwolves to the promised land. They're up 3-1 against the Denver Nuggets, and they have a chance to close the series out next game. But like I said, Dante DiVincenzo and Ant-Man were out. Less than 2 minutes into the game, Dante DiVincenzo goes down and ruptures his Achilles. Horrible. I hope he recovers soon. Obviously, his season's ended now. But yeah, I really hope he gets better. I love Dante DiVincenzo as a player. He's one of my favorite players in the league. That might sound crazy. I know many people don't say that, but yeah, I've seen his whole career. I loved him with the Knicks, and I'm happy where he's at now with the Wolves. But I digress. 6 minutes later, Anthony Edwards goes down with a knee injury, and come to find out that just a bit ago, Shams Charania posted that Anthony Edwards will be out for a couple weeks because it's a bone bruise in his knee, which is horrible. But that didn't stop AYO Dosunmu from dropping 43 points. And something I want to say is that from the start of the game, you can tell that the Wolves were shaken. Most likely because of that last game. I didn't make a video on the last game previously, but, the big storyline before it was that Jaden McDaniels was talking all of this, smack, and he was giving them work and whatnot. After their first win against Denver, reporter asked him, what was the key to winning next game? Jaden McDaniels replied, but focus the bad defenders, and proceeds to call out the whole team. So this guy just put on a generational aura gamble, and he won. He's one of the only people to ever do that. And you can still tell that the Nuggets were shaken up by that. And it's not something we see much in playoff basketball because it's a whole different mentality than, a regular season game. If something happens in the regular season, you may still think about that in the next couple games, whatever. But when it comes to the playoffs, you don't. You don't usually, keep what's on your mind from the last game. It's a new slate. It's a new time to focus on the new problems. But anyways, this game was intense. It was neck and neck the whole time. The Nuggets were etching them out. Just like at the first half, it was kind of the Nuggets' half. They weren't dominant by any means, but they weren't submissive in a sense. And the Wolves just kept crawling back, even with their two starters from the front court gone. I mean, the backcourt gone. Like it's crazy what the work that they were able to give the Nuggets with just having AYO Dosunmu, Jaden McDaniels, and Rudy Gobert really take the lead. And Rudy Gobert looked like he was the defensive player of the year that he used to be, and he was cleaning the glass today. 14 rebounds. Well, not today, but yesterday. But 14 rebounds this guy had. Crazy. And he gave Jokic work. For the first 3 quarters, he held Jokic to 22 points. And, that may sound like a lot, but this is NIKOLA Jokic we're talking about. We're talking about one of the greatest players in the league right now. And he kept them to 22 points while he was the first option. And then, not only that, but in the fourth quarter, he held them to 2 points. The whole fourth quarter. Craziness. The Timberwolves defense in the fourth quarter was astonishing. It was a new level that I don't think we've ever seen them play at. Maybe a couple times here and there, but this is like Jaden McDaniels was in his bag, AYO Dosunmu in his bag, Bones Highland in his bag. Every single player on the court locked down their target. Like, there was not a single mismatch going on. And I have to say that this game was a nail-biter until the fourth quarter rolled around. Because when the fourth quarter rolled around, that's when the Wolves started to go on that run. They had a 6-point lead, and then they moved it up and moved it up and moved it up. And they just kept that lead. And AYO Dosunmu kept, going to the basket. He kept bringing that ability to go downhill. He couldn't be stopped. he couldn't be stopped. And we know where AYO Dosunmu comes from. He, the Wolves got him in that trade. They really didn't trade him for much. They gave scraps away to get a great star/role player. In Chicago, I'm gonna have to say he's a star, because who else is the next star over there? Josh Giddey, Patrick Williams? No, like there's no stars over in Chicago. But regardless, though, AYO Dosunmu, he was traded for basically scraps. The stuff that Minnesota didn't need, gave him away to Chicago. AYO Dosunmu was given back in return. Shout out to Rob Dillingham. He's doing his thing over in Chicago, but he's no AYO Dosunmu. But I digress. This trade, when it had happened, obviously a lot of people were like, okay, I think it's a win-win. But now coming to the, postseason, when it really matters, the Wolves won this trade by a landslide. The Wolves, although they are the 6th seed and whatnot, they won this trade by a landslide. AYO Dosunmu, Rob Dillingham is not going to put up 43 points. All love to him, man, but he is small. He doesn't play good defense. I could go on, but I'm not going to. But AYO Dosunmu, he is a different beast. But anyways, I keep going on and on about this because 43 points is a great... he's one of only 4 players to score over 40 points in a playoff game for Wolves history, in the history of the franchise being around. And he just scored the second highest amount of points in a playoff game. That's an accomplishment that, it's a crazy feat for someone who just got to the team, a couple months ago. We seen Cam Johnson, his opponent on the court, still trying to figure out where he's going to be lining up in the Nuggets, rotation. And he's been there for the whole season. I would assume we got there at the trade deadline. But anyways, this was just kind of a whole, mix-up of just greatness. Every single player who was put on the court, was put on at the right time. The substitutions were great. And, keeping AYO on there for the whole game, basically, 42 minutes he played, 43 points he gave. It was great. It was the right call every single time. There was not one moment where I thought he should have been subbed out because, maybe he's looking tired or whatnot. He kept that dog energy the whole time. And when Anthony Edwards went out, I am going to admit this, I thought this was over. I kept watching because I hoped that the Wolves were going to win and, prevail. And they did. But I had a very big sense of, man, Anthony Edwards is out. Dante DiVincenzo's out. What are the Wolves going to pull out? And what they pulled out is a masterclass of team chemistry. This is on the levels of, the Oklahoma City Thunder. This team chemistry, they knew what they were doing. Rudy Gobert knew his role. He even shot a 3-pointer, and it was it was during a spurt of when the Wolves were on that run, and they were just feeling themselves. It was, late in the 4th, and Rudy Gobert shot a 3, and almost went in, but it was, a funny moment on the broadcast, because Rudy Gobert hitting a 3 would have been crazy. The whole place would have erupted. And every single time Bones Highland got downhill, he was able to get to the basket, and if he didn't get it in, Rudy Gobert was there to pick up the boards. And it was really just hustle. It was hustle, team chemistry, and just hard dedication, really, by AYO Dosunmu, Rudy Gobert, and Jaden McDaniels. I keep talking about Bones Highland because he kind of impressed me a lot throughout this. Although maybe I liked his defensive plays. I liked how he was being on the court. His off the ball plays were really interesting to me. But Jaden McDaniels as well played a huge role in this win. I had touched on it previously, but the whole thing of the game before, Jaden McDaniels getting in their head, calling them all bad defenders, you could kind of tell this game they were second guessing themselves on the defensive side. They were second guessing when to switch. They're second guessing when to drop, when to play high coverage, whatever it may be. They were second guessing themselves, and that's not something you do in a playoff game. That's something you do in practice. That's something you do when you have time to do it. You know, and that's, I think, mainly what cost them the game, is all the times that they second guess themselves. And, as the game went on, they started to get into their own, more specifically Jamal Murray. But Nikola Jokic, Aaron Gordon, all of them kind of were a bit stagnant, you could say, when it comes to the defensive end, and especially even offensive end. There was only two people on the Nuggets to get over 10 points, and that was Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. Every single person got 10 or less points. The only other person who got 10 points, and that was in the third highest scoring, was Tim Hardaway Jr. with 10 points. And he was also great defensively. I have to say that. They put him on AYO Dosunmu, but hey man, what are you going to do against the greatest Wolf to ever exist? Sorry, Kevin Garnett, we don't need you. We have AYO Dosunmu. Sorry, Anthony Edwards, we have AYO Dosunmu now. You know what I mean? Like, I'm really intrigued though how the next game is going to go, because although yes, they had all of this momentum in this game and whatnot, they don't have Anthony Edwards and they don't have Dante DiVincenzo for next game. And God forbid someone gets injured, but those are the two key starters. But something that also makes me less worried though is the fact that this Minnesota Timberwolves team has the ability to just pluck someone out of nowhere and go drop 40 points, and they do it. Like, at the start of the game, AYO Dosunmu was showing off a bit. He was playing good, when he was subbed in and whatnot. But he wasn't something like profound. Like, it wasn't something crazy. Like, oh, I can't believe he's doing this. It looked like a normal game, but he took that step up. And the game before, Jaden McDaniels took that step up. Every single player on this team is able to have one of those games. And obviously they are, because they're NBA players. But, there's levels to this. There's players who are able to, take that leap and, take the helm when you need them to. And there's some that, pass the ball out when they aren't able to take the helm. And I would assume it was one of those players who can, rise up for the challenge, and he can really go to work. And it was great to see, like I touched on before as well, like him coming from the Bulls, just, this new scenery, it gave him such a rejuvenation of, I guess, life. He brought something to the Wolves that I personally wasn't expecting. He brought a sense of like safety when Anthony Edwards wasn't on the court. And that was his whole role, the whole regular season after the trade deadline, was to be the second string when Ant isn't on the court. Or he can play alongside Ant if he needs to. But I digress. This game was amazing. I loved everything that the Wolves did. I'm going to be cheering for them, when it comes to, Game 5. I couldn't ask for a better game, to be fair. Like, this was so good. I'd assume we saved basketball. 43 points. Holy crap. It was amazing to see. Like, these playoffs have been so amazing. They have delivered every single time. The Knicks and Atlanta series, so good. The Lakers-Rockets series, so good. Even the Thunder and the Phoenix game that just had happened was actually a really good game. It was closer than I expected. The Detroit-Orlando, series, that was great. It's been so great seeing these playoffs and everything. And, I just hope to just get more great basketball and this added on top of it. But anyways, yeah, have a great rest of your days. Whoever's watching this, please subscribe. It was show me some love. If you didn't like the video, still subscribe. Because who knows? Maybe you'll like my stuff later on. I'm still growing. I'm still getting better. Thank you very much. Peace.